Welcome to our deep dive into how young adults, like you guys are shaping the future of transportation, especially in cities.
Right.
We're going to be looking at a research report by The Economist Impact, sponsored by Nissan, which surveyed over 3,750 young adults.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, in 15 global cities.
Yeah.
And we're also going to be drawing on some recent news articles and reports just to kind of get a broader perspective.
Sounds good.
So are you ready to explore how cities are going green and how our generation is leading the way?
Absolutely. And I think you'll find some of the results quite surprising. It's not always as simple as save the planet when it comes to choosing where to live and how to get around, especially in a busy city.
Yeah, that's what caught my eye right away.
Okay.
The report highlights that while sustainability is on our minds, of course,
Sure.
it's not the only factor.
Right.
Turns out things like the cost of living, safety, and easy access to transportation are the top priorities when young adults are deciding where to settle down.
It makes sense when you think about it, For many in our generation, especially those just starting out, those day-to-day concerns can feel much more immediate than the long-term impacts of climate change.
Right.
And if you're constantly worried about making rent or feeling safe on your commute, eco-friendly choices might take a back seat.
It's that balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to do what's good for the planet,
Uh-huh.
but we also have to navigate the realities of city life.
Right.
What about you? Have you ever felt that pull between your ideals and the practicalities of getting around?
Definitely. I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
And the report actually highlights some interesting regional differences.
Okay.
For example, in emerging megacities like Delhi or Manila, where pollution and traffic are constant struggles,
Yeah.
sustainability becomes much more of a priority.
It's almost like it's not just an abstract concept anymore. It's part of your daily experience.
Exactly.
If you're dealing with smog or getting stuck in gridlock for hours,
Uh-huh.
it changes your perspective. Have you ever lived somewhere where the environmental impact of transportation was impossible to ignore?
I have, and it definitely makes you rethink your choices.
Right.
It's a good segue into our next topic, the rise of electric vehicles.
Okay, so EVs,
EVs?
they're everywhere, right?
They are.
The report even says that over a third of young adults surveyed expect to be using an electric car regularly within a decade.
Wow.
Is that realistic?
The numbers are certainly heading in that direction.
Okay.
Projections show EV sales increasing five-fold globally between 2022 and 2030.
Huge.
But as you hinted at, it's not a uniform trend.
Okay.
The level of enthusiasm for EVs varies significantly between cities and income levels.
What are some of those differences?
Well, interestingly, emerging cities are actually leading the charge with EVs often seen as status symbols.
Oh, interesting.
But there are also concerns about battery life and charging infrastructure that are more prominent in those areas.
I see.
Imagine living in a city where reliable electricity is already a challenge. Suddenly, range anxiety takes on a whole new meaning.
That's a good point. And I imagine cost is still a barrier in many developed countries.
Uh-huh.
EVs aren't exactly known for being budget-friendly, especially for young people who might be juggling student loans or just starting their careers.
Exactly. And even if you can afford the upfront cost, there are other factors to consider.
Right.
In some developed cities, charging infrastructure hasn't quite caught up with demand.
Oh, right.
So finding a place to charge can be a hassle.
Yeah.
And then there are concerns about battery life, especially in colder climates.
It's like there's a whole mental checklist you have to go through before you even get behind the wheel.
Right.
But amidst all of this, there's also this intriguing idea that EVs could become more than just transportation.
Yeah.
They could be part of a larger energy ecosystem.
Mm.
Have you heard about vehicle-to-load and vehicle-to-grid technology?
Those are fascinating developments.
Yeah.
Vehicle to load, or V2L, essentially allows you to use your EV's battery to power other devices like camping equipment or even your home during a power outage.
So it's like having a giant portable battery pack on wheels.
Pretty much.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And vehicle-to-grid, or VDG, takes it a step further, right?
Exactly. With V2G, your EV could actually feed energy back into the grid during peak demand times,
Interesting.
helping to stabilize the system and potentially even earn you some money.
It almost makes your car an active participant in the energy grid, not just a consumer.
Right.
And the report quotes Liana Sipsagan, a leading expert on electric vehicles, who predicts that a new petrol-powered car will ultimately become an asset with little to no residual value.
Wow.
This is pretty drastic. What kind of impact do you think that will have on the car market overall?
It's a bold statement, but it reflects a growing sentiment in the industry.
Okay.
If gas-powered cars start losing their value rapidly, it could have a cascading effect on the used car market,
I see.
potentially making it harder for people to afford personal vehicles.
And could this accelerate the shift towards electric?
Possibly.
Or will it create a whole new set of challenges? Well, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, definitely.
But while electric vehicles are grabbing headlines, let's not forget about a mode of transportation that's been around for a while, public transit.
Public transit often gets overlooked in these conversations.
Yeah.
But it remains a crucial part of the urban mobility landscape, especially for those with limited budgets.
The report actually highlights that public transit is projected to increase in popularity across all income levels.
Really?
It makes you wonder, are we on the cusp of a public transit renaissance?
It's certainly possible, and there are some encouraging signs.
Okay.
The report mentions Ireland, where fare reductions have led to a significant increase in public transit use, particularly among young adults.
Interesting.
Would lower fares make public transportation more appealing to you?
It's definitely something I'd consider, especially if it meant saving money and reducing my carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And it's not just about fares, right?
Right.
There's also the rising cost of car ownership, fuel insurance maintenance.
Yeah,
It all adds up.
it does.
Those factors are making public transit a more attractive option, even for people who might have previously preferred to drive.
Absolutely.
But for public transit to truly thrive, it needs to be convenient, reliable, and well integrated into the urban fabric.
Yeah.
The report uses Tokyo as a positive example, highlighting the city's incredibly user-friendly transit app.
I've heard about that.
Imagine being able to plan your entire journey, receive real-time updates, and even check train carriage occupancy all from your phone.
That's amazing.
What features do you find most useful in a transit app, or what features do you wish existed?
For me, it's all about making public transit a seamless and enjoyable experience rather than a chore.
Right.
And it's about ensuring that it's accessible and safe for everyone.
Speaking of safety, that's a key concern that often comes up, especially when we talk about public transit.
You're absolutely right, and the report emphasizes the need for improvements in this area. Well-lit stations, clear signage, security personnel, these are all elements that contribute to a sense of safety and security for riders.
It's about creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable and confident using public transportation.
And it's about recognizing that public transit is not just a transportation system. It's a social space, a community hub, and a vital part of what makes a city livable.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to our deep dive into sustainable urban mobility.
We've been exploring how young adults are really pushing for greener transportation options, but let's face it, there are hurdles to overcome.
Definitely making sustainable mobility a reality involves more than just cool technology and good intentions. There are some real challenges we need to address.
One that really struck me from the research was the awareness gap.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like people are excited about electric vehicles, but there's still a lot of confusion about how they actually work and what it takes to integrate them into our lives.
You've hit a crucial point. The Economist Impact Report found that while interest in EVs is skyrocketing, especially in those up-and-coming megacities, understanding doesn't always keep pace.
Right.
People may love the idea of an electric car, but they might not fully grasp things like battery range, charging time, or the overall environmental impact of producing those batteries.
So it's not enough to just have the technology we need to educate people and make sure they have accurate information so they can make informed choices, right?
Precisely. Cities, automakers, even energy providers need to step up and help people navigate this new landscape. Imagine having clear, easy-to-understand resources that explain the ins and outs of EVs, the different types of charging infrastructure, and the potential cost savings over time.
It's about empowering people, giving them the knowledge to choose what's right for their lifestyle and their budget. But beyond individual choices, we also need systemic change, don't we?
Absolutely. Think about our cities. They were designed for cars, not for people. We need to rethink how we design our streets, our neighborhoods, our entire urban fabric to prioritize sustainable transportation.
So we're talking about more than just adding a few bike lanes here and there.
Right.
It's about a fundamental shift in how we approach urban planning.
Exactly. And that requires a change in mindset from city leaders and policymakers.
Yeah.
We need to move away from car-centric thinking and embrace a more holistic approach that puts people and the planet first.
What are some examples of cities that are doing this well?
There are lots of exciting initiatives popping up around the world, for example. Some cities are experimenting with congestion pricing.
Congestion pricing. I've heard of that, but could you explain how it works?
Essentially, drivers are charged a fee for entering congested areas during peak hours. The idea is to discourage unnecessary car trips and encourage people to choose alternative modes of transport like public transit, cycling, or walking.
So it's using financial incentives to encourage behavior change.
Right, and it's not just about penalizing drivers. The revenue generated from congestion pricing can be used to improve public transportation, making it even more attractive and accessible.
That makes sense. Are there other innovative approaches cities are taking?
Some cities are creating mobility hubs, which are basically centralized locations that offer a variety of transportation options. Imagine a place where you can easily connect to public transit, rent a bike, find a car-sharing service, or even charge your EV all in one convenient spot.
It's like a one-stop shop for all your transportation needs.
Exactly, and it's about creating a more seamless and integrated transportation system that allows people to choose the best mode for each trip without hassle.
Speaking of choices, there's been an explosion of micromobility options in recent years, like those e-scooters and e-bikes you see everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
They seem like a fun and efficient way to get around, especially for shorter trips.
They've definitely changed the urban landscape, and they offer a lot of benefits. They're relatively affordable, easy to use, and can help reduce traffic congestion and emissions.
But I imagine there are also challenges with integrating them into existing infrastructure and ensuring they're used safely.
You're right. Cities are still figuring out how to regulate e-scooters and e-bikes to prevent sidewalk clutter, ensure rider safety, and minimize conflicts with pedestrians.
It's a learning curve, as with any new technology, but it's encouraging to see that cities are willing to adapt and experiment.
Absolutely. And technology is playing a huge role in all of this. We've talked about transit apps, but there's so many other innovations emerging.
Like what?
Well, think about smart traffic management systems that use sensors and AI to optimize traffic flow and reduce congestion, or autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, buses, even delivery robots. It sounds futuristic, but it's closer than you think.
It's amazing to think about the possibilities, but technology alone isn't the answer, is it?
No, it's not. Ultimately, sustainable mobility depends on people changing their behavior.
It all comes down to choices.
Exactly. We can build all the bike lanes and charging stations in the world, but if people aren't willing to leave their cars at home, it won't make a difference.
So how do we encourage people to make those changes?
Well, one way is to make sustainable options more convenient and affordable than driving. We've talked about congestion pricing and fare reductions, but there are other things cities can do, like creating car-free zones, expanding bike-sharing programs, and improving the pedestrian experience.
Making it easy and enjoyable to get around without a car.
Exactly. Another strategy is to highlight the benefits of sustainable mobility, not just for the environment, but for people's health, well-being, and wallets.
So emphasizing those personal advantages that go beyond just saving the planet.
Right. For example, studies show that people who walk or cycle regularly have lower rates of chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes. And think about the money you could save on gas parking and car maintenance.
Those are real, tangible benefits that people can relate to.
Absolutely. And we can also leverage social influence to promote sustainable behavior.
What do you mean by that?
Well, people are more likely to do something if they see their friends, family, or neighbors doing it. Think about the power of social media. If we can showcase people choosing sustainable transportation options and having positive experiences, it can help normalize those behaviors and inspire others to follow suit.
It's about making sustainable mobility cool, desirable, and aspirational.
Exactly. And it's about celebrating success stories and highlighting cities that are leading the way.
Sounds like it's a multi-pronged approach. We need infrastructure technology policy, but also a shift in culture and social norms.
You've got it. It's about creating a movement, a collective shift in consciousness that recognizes the interconnectedness of our transportation choices, our environment, and our well-being.
That's a powerful image. But I imagine there will be pushback along the way. Not everyone is eager to embrace change, especially when it comes to how they get around.
Of course, there will be disagreements, debates, and even resistance. Change is never easy, but it's essential if we want to create a more sustainable and livable future.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of sustainable transportation.
It's been a fascinating journey, exploring the trends and the challenges and just the incredible innovations shaping how we move around our cities.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from electric vehicles and public transit to those cool micromobility options, and even the mind-blowing potential of self-driving cars.
Right, and we've also talked about the importance of infrastructure technology policy, and perhaps most importantly, the need for a shift in our mindset and behaviors.
But as we've discussed, getting to that truly sustainable and equitable future won't be easy.
You're right, there will be roadblocks, disagreements, and times when we need to find creative compromises.
So how do we navigate those challenges? How do we create a shared vision for the future of transportation that works for everyone?
It starts with open and honest dialogue. We need to bring all the stakeholders to the table: city planners, policymakers, transportation providers, tech companies, community groups, and of course, everyday citizens.
It's about creating a space where everyone feels heard and respected, even if they have different perspectives or priorities.
Exactly. We need to listen to each other, understand the unique needs of different communities, and find solutions that work for everyone, not just a select few.
Sometimes that means being willing to compromise, recognizing that there's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution.
You're right. What works in one city might not work in another, and what's convenient for one person might be a barrier for someone else.
It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot, where we can create a transportation system that's both sustainable and equitable.
And we need to be open to experimentation. Let's try new things, learn from what works, and be willing to adapt when things don't go as planned.
It's like we're all figuring this out together, right?
Yeah.
There's no roadmap, but there's a lot of passion and a lot of great ideas out there.
Absolutely. And this is a conversation that needs to happen at all levels, from international summits to neighborhood meetings. Sustainable transportation isn't just a top-down initiative. It's also about empowering individuals and communities.
It's about people taking ownership of their transportation choices and working together to create the kind of cities they want to live in.
And amidst all the complexities, I think it's crucial to remember the values that unite us. Sustainability is a big one, obviously.
Protecting our planet for future generations, that's something we can all agree on.
But it's also about equity, making sure that everyone has access to safe, affordable, and reliable transportation, no matter who they are or where they live.
It's about creating a system that works for everyone, not just those who can afford to drive a car or live in a trendy neighborhood.
And let's not forget about livability. We want cities that are vibrant, healthy, and enjoyable to live in places where people can connect with each other, with nature, and with the urban environment.
It's about recognizing that transportation isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about creating a better quality of life for everyone.
Exactly. And I think one of the most exciting aspects of this whole conversation is the incredible potential for innovation. We're already seeing amazing advancements in technology, policy, and urban design.
It's like the whole field is bursting with creativity, from smart traffic systems to self-driving vehicles to those futuristic mobility hubs. It feels like we're on the cusp of a transportation revolution.
And who knows what other incredible ideas are just waiting to be discovered. This is an invitation to think outside the box, to challenge assumptions, and to imagine a future where transportation is not a problem to be solved, but an opportunity to create a better world.
Speaking of imagining the future, it really got me thinking. Our sources focused a lot on the role of policy and infrastructure in shaping transportation choices.
Which are undeniably important factors.
But what about the role of culture and social norms? How do our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors influence the way we move around?
That's a fascinating question. It makes you think about how we can create a culture that embraces sustainable transportation, not just out of necessity, but because it's seen as the desirable and enjoyable way to get around.
It's about shifting our mindset from car-centric to people-centric, where walking, cycling, and public transit are celebrated as integral parts of a vibrant urban lifestyle.
And it's about recognizing that our transportation choices are not just individual decisions. They're also social acts that contribute to the kind of communities we want to build.
So it's about more than just building bike lanes or installing charging stations. It's about creating a cultural shift that values sustainability, equity, and livability.
It's about reimagining our relationship with our cities and with each other, recognizing that the way we move around is deeply intertwined with our sense of community, our well-being, and our shared future.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive into sustainable transportation.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And as we wrap up, I hope you're feeling inspired to think differently about how you get around to challenge the status quo and to be part of creating a future where transportation is truly sustainable, equitable, and joyful for all. Thanks for joining us.